Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, events, or locales is purely coincidental. The events described may include emotional, intense, or mature themes intended for a mature audience. It was a crisp late afternoon when Sarah and David decided to take a spontaneous weekend road trip, leaving behind the bustling city for the calm embrace of the countryside. The sun dipped low, casting golden rays across the winding road, and the couple felt an unfamiliar sense of freedom. Laughter and casual conversation filled the car as they passed fields dotted with grazing cows and small clusters of trees that swayed gently in the evening breeze. For a moment, the world seemed perfect. Suddenly, a sharp grinding noise echoed from under the car. David frowned, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. Smoke began to curl from the engine. "Oh," he muttered. He pulled over to the side of the empty road, heart racing. Sarah leaned forward, peering at the hood, worry etched across her face. "What do you think happened?" she asked, a twinge of fear in her voice. David tried the ignition, but the car only coughed and died. He cursed softly under his breath. No cell service. The nearest town was miles away, and the sun was fast disappearing behind the hills. The couple exchanged anxious glances, realizing they might be stranded for the night. Panic hovered like a shadow over them, tightening with every passing minute. As they sat contemplating their next move, Sarah noticed a small, dimly lit sign in the distance. "Hotel." In it read, swaying slightly in the evening breeze. Relief and suspicion wrestled within them. Could it be open? Was it safe? With no other choice, they decided to head toward it, hoping for shelter from the creeping darkness. The drive toward the hotel was tense. The road narrowed, the trees seemed to close in, and the air grew cooler as night fell. By the time they arrived, the hotel stood before them like a relic from another era, its lights casting long, wavering shadows across the driveway. The building was quaint, almost charming, yet something about it felt slightly off. Perhaps it was the overly polite receptionist who greeted them with a smile that seemed too practiced, too perfect. Or maybe it was the quiet emptiness of the lobby, the odd smell of polished wood and faint perfume. Exhausted, they checked in quickly, receiving a key for a room at the end of a dimly lit hallway. The room was surprisingly cozy, yet peculiar. An old-fashioned charm lingered in the heavy curtains, antique furniture, and the faint ticking of a wall clock. As Sarah unpacked her small bag, she noticed a locked drawer in the dresser, an oddity that went unexplored for the moment. David sank into the armchair by the window, glancing out at the quiet landscape. The road they had traveled seemed a world away now. Outside, the wind rustled the trees in eerie whispers. Inside, an uneasy silence settled. Both tried to shake off the growing sense of unease, reminding themselves that this was just a hotel, a temporary haven in a night full of uncertainty. Little did they know, their choice to seek shelter here would unravel truths they could never have anticipated, truths that would change their understanding of each other and the world outside forever. The night was just beginning, and the hotel had its secrets waiting for them. Sarah and David stepped out of the car, stretching their stiff limbs after the stressful drive. The hotel loomed before them, its facade bathed in the pale glow of the lanterns that lined the walkway. At first glance, it seemed almost enchanting, old-world charm with ivy crawling up the walls and flower pots that hinted at care and attention. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an air of mystery, a subtle tension that neither of them could place. The moment they entered the lobby, they were greeted by the soft chime of a bell. A receptionist, impeccably dressed in a crisp uniform, appeared from behind the desk. His smile was warm, yet just slightly too perfect, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Welcome," he said, his voice smooth and polished. "We've been expecting you." David raised an eyebrow at the comment, exchanging a glance with Sarah, but chose to ignore the odd phrasing. Exhaustion had dulled their instincts, and the promise of warmth and shelter was far too tempting to resist. The check-in process was swift. The receptionist handed them a brass key, explaining with a polite emphasis that their room was at the far end of the second-floor hallway. Dinner is served until 9 p.m. in the dining hall, should you wish to dine, he added. Every word was measured, deliberate. There was something rehearsed in his tone, something that made the couple feel slightly out of place in the quiet elegance of the hotel. As they ascended the creaking staircase to their room, the hallway stretched longer than they had anticipated, the walls lined with portraits of people whose faces seemed almost alive in the flickering light of the antique sconces. Each step echoed, amplifying the suspense that now tinged their nerves. When they finally reached the room, Sarah fumbled with the key, and the door swung open to reveal a space that was cozy but peculiar. The room had an old-fashioned charm, a four-poster bed with heavy drapes, a writing desk with a leather-bound journal sitting atop it, and a wardrobe that seemed almost too large for the space. The faint smell of lavender lingered in the air, mingling with an undertone of dust, suggesting the room hadn't been used frequently. A subtle detail caught Sarah's eye, a small, locked drawer in the dresser, its brass handle gleaming under the dim light. Something about it felt out of place, yet curiosity had to be momentarily set aside. After settling in, they moved toward the window. Outside, the world was quiet, almost eerily so. The road they had traveled seemed swallowed by darkness, the surrounding trees casting long shadows in the moonlight. Inside, the hotel seemed alive in its silence, a distant creak, the soft hum of the central heating, the almost imperceptible shuffle of movement beyond the walls. Sarah shivered, and David instinctively pulled her closer, both aware that the comfort of the hotel was now tinged with unease. As the couple prepared to freshen up before dinner, neither noticed the subtle glances exchanged by the receptionist with a shadowy figure in the lobby. Something was stirring beneath the hotel's surface, an unspoken truth waiting to reveal itself as the night progressed. After unpacking their bags and taking a brief moment to breathe, Sarah and David decided to explore the room a little more before heading down for dinner. The four-poster bed loomed majestically, its heavy curtains slightly drawn, creating shadows that danced across the walls. David ran his fingers over the smooth wooden surface of the writing desk, noticing the leather-bound journal lying neatly on top. Something about it felt oddly deliberate, as though it were meant to draw attention. Sarah's gaze, however, was drawn to the small locked drawer in the dresser. Its presence gnawed at her curiosity, and she found herself imagining what could be inside, though she didn't dare touch it yet. The hotel's quiet was almost unnatural. As they prepared to leave the room, Sarah thought she heard a soft creak outside the door, followed by the faint sound of whispered voices. She paused, her heart skipping a beat. "Did you hear that?" she asked, glancing nervously at David. He shrugged, trying to mask his own unease. "It's probably just another guest or the old building settling," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. They made their way down the dimly lit hallway toward the dining area. The corridor seemed longer than it had appeared earlier, and the shadows from the antique sconces stretched unnaturally along the walls. When they finally reached the dining hall, it was nearly empty. A few other guests sat quietly at distant tables, eating their meals in near silence. One woman looked up briefly, her eyes flickering with something indecipherable before she quickly returned to her plate. The couple took a corner table, attempting to calm their nerves. The dinner menu was simple, but the food was unexpectedly exquisite. They tried to enjoy it, talking about the day's drive, the beautiful scenery, and plans for the following morning. But the atmosphere felt heavy, almost charged. Every now and then, Sarah caught herself glancing around the room, noticing small, strange details, a clock that seemed slightly off, the subtle way one of the waitstaff watched them from across the hall, the way the flickering candlelight cast strange shapes on the walls. Returning to their table, Sarah noticed a shadow move across the far end of the hall. She blinked and it was gone, leaving only the faint echo of a whispered laugh. "Did you see that?" she asked again, voice trembling. David's eyes followed the direction she pointed, but there was nothing. "Probably just my imagination," he said, though even he couldn't shake the chill crawling up his spine. Back in their room, the uneasy feeling grew stronger. The wind outside whispered through the trees, brushing against the window panes like unseen fingers. Sarah's curiosity about the locked drawer became overwhelming, but before she could reach for it, a soft knock came at the door. They froze, exchanging a wary glance. "Room service," David whispered, but no one answered. Only silence. The knock came again, slow, deliberate. Something about the hotel was different from what they had expected. It was no longer just a safe haven from the breakdown of their car. It had become a place of tension, suspicion, and subtle dread. The night was still young, but already the hotel had started to reveal its first unsettling truths, mysteries that would force Sarah and David to confront fears and suspicions they had never imagined. The soft knock at the door lingered in the silence of the room. David cautiously approached and peered through the peephole. Nothing. Heart pounding, he turned the knob, expecting perhaps a hotel staff member with a tray or forgotten delivery. But the hallway was empty, eerily quiet, the faint hum of the old chandelier overhead the only sound. Sarah clutched his arm, feeling the weight of unease settle heavier on her chest. "Maybe it's nothing," David whispered, though his own voice betrayed uncertainty. Deciding to leave the door locked, they sat on the edge of the bed, trying to shake off the creeping tension. But the hotel seemed to conspire against them. Shadows shifted across the room as the wind played against the curtains, creating shapes that appeared almost human. Each noise, the creak of a floorboard, the distant thud of a closing door, the hushed laughter echoing from somewhere beyond the walls, made their nerves tighter, their breathing shallow. Later, they ventured into the small hotel lounge to try and ease their minds. A couple of other guests sat silently, drinking tea and reading, but there was an unsettling air to their demeanor. One guest, a man with sharp eyes, kept glancing at them, his stare lingering too long before he returned to his newspaper. Sarah felt a shiver trace her spine. "Why do I feel like everyone here is watching us?" she murmured. David attempted a reassuring smile, but didn't respond. He, too, felt the unspoken tension that hung thickly in the air. At the reception, the ever-smiling clerk handed them a folded note with no explanation. David unfolded it, revealing only a cryptic message: "Not everything is as it seems. Watch carefully." A chill ran through both of them. The clerk's smile remained perfectly calm, almost knowing, as if he expected them to react this way. David stuffed the note into his pocket, trying to convince Sarah that it was likely a prank or some hotel tradition. But deep down, both knew there was more to the hotel than they could comprehend. As they wandered back toward their room, the hallway seemed longer, narrower, the portraits on the walls now unsettling in the dim light. One of the paintings, a woman with piercing eyes, seemed to follow their every step. Shadows of unseen figures appeared briefly in corners, vanishing when looked at directly. Sarah's anxiety rose, her imagination running wild. David reached for her hand, grounding himself as much as her. The final straw came when Sarah overheard a fragment of conversation from a room nearby. The words were muffled but unmistakable. They shouldn't know yet. Too late to turn back. Her stomach tightened. She shared what she heard with David, and their unease turned into fear. It wasn't just the hotel's strange atmosphere anymore. Something was deliberately hidden from them, a secret they were not meant to uncover. By the time they returned to their room, the hotel no longer felt like a refuge. It was a place of observation, of subtle manipulation. Every glance, every whispered conversation, every shadow hinted at a truth that was slowly beginning to emerge, a truth that would change the course of their night and challenge everything they thought they knew about safety, trust, and the people around them. Back in their room, Sarah and David couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The locked drawer in the dresser now seemed like more than just a quirky feature of the old hotel room. It felt like a key, a clue waiting to be discovered. Sarah's curiosity had reached its peak. "I need to know what's inside," she whispered, her fingers brushing the brass handle. David hesitated, worried about what they might uncover, but finally nodded. "Be careful," he cautioned, watching as she tried to figure out how to open it. While Sarah fumbled with the lock, David paced near the window, peering out into the darkness. The hotel grounds, though appearing calm under the moonlight, seemed to carry a strange energy, almost as if the walls themselves were listening. A distant door creaked, followed by muffled voices. Every noise amplified the suspense, making even the familiar shadows of the room appear threatening. Finally, with a soft click, the drawer opened. Inside were several old envelopes, each carefully labeled with dates from years past. One envelope, however, bore a name that made both Sarah and David freeze, David's own last name. Trembling, David opened it and pulled out a collection of photographs, letters, and journal entries. The photos were of him, though some dated back to years before he had ever visited this area. Sarah gasped, unable to look away as the letters revealed intimate details about David's life, details that no one should have known. Before they could process the shock, there was a soft knock on the door, followed by the unmistakable sound of the receptionist's voice. "I see you found something you weren't meant to," he said, calm yet commanding. Their blood ran cold. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His smile, once reassuring, now carried an edge of knowing menace. "This hotel, it preserves truths. Secrets. Things people hide from themselves or each other," he continued, eyes never leaving theirs. David's mind raced. How could anyone have known so much about him? About them? Sarah felt a mixture of fear and anger, clutching his arm. "Why us?" she demanded. The receptionist's response was chilling in its simplicity, because some truths must be revealed before they can be confronted. "And tonight, your night is here." The realization struck them both. This was no ordinary hotel. It wasn't merely a place of shelter from a broken-down car. It was a place designed to expose hidden truths, to bring secrets to light. Every glance from the other guests, every whispered conversation, every peculiar detail of the hotel's decor now made sense. They were participants in a carefully orchestrated revelation. David and Sarah's emotions swirled: fear, disbelief, vulnerability, and even a strange sense of anticipation. What they would do next could change everything about their relationship, their trust in each other, and how they saw the world. The hotel had already begun to unravel the threads of their past, bringing hidden truths into the open, forcing them to confront the reality they had unknowingly carried with them. As the night deepened, the couple realized that nothing would ever be the same. The hotel had shown its first layer of truth, but the most significant revelations were still to come, ones that would challenge their courage, their bond, and their understanding of reality itself. The air in the room was thick with tension, and neither Sarah nor David could sit still. Every shadow seemed heavier, every creak louder. The revelations from the locked drawer had left them both reeling, and now, the hotel itself felt like a living entity, watching their every move. The receptionist's calm presence in the doorway only amplified their unease, his knowing gaze almost suffocating. David took a deep breath. "Why us? Why are you showing me this?" he demanded, his voice wavering between anger and fear. The receptionist stepped closer, his expression composed yet unyielding. "Some truths are hidden until the right moment. This hotel, it has a purpose. It brings those truths to light so that choices can be made, reconciliations attempted, or mistakes confronted." His words seemed almost surreal, as if they had entered a world where logic no longer applied. Sarah felt her heart pounding in her chest. "But how do you know all this about us? About him?" Her eyes were wide with disbelief. The receptionist's eyes flickered toward her, his voice steady. "Because secrets, no matter how deeply buried, leave traces. And some places, like this hotel, are attuned to them." He gestured toward the envelope of letters and photographs, which David held tremblingly. "This is only the beginning. There are truths within you both that even you refuse to admit to yourselves. Tonight, you will confront them." David felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. "We didn't come here for this. We just needed a room." The receptionist's smile, almost imperceptibly sad, seemed to acknowledge the frustration. "And yet, here you are, faced with what you must face. Avoidance is impossible when the night itself conspires to reveal it." The couple realized that trying to flee would accomplish nothing. The hotel had a way of holding them within its walls until the necessary confrontations were complete. The shadowy corners of the room seemed to close in as they both grappled with the revelations, the photographs of David's past, the intimate details they had never shared, the unspoken secrets they carried within themselves and between each other. Finally, David spoke, his voice quieter now, tinged with vulnerability. If this place is showing us things, maybe we need to face them together. Sarah nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. The fear that had gripped them both slowly transformed into a shared resolve. They began to discuss the secrets that had long been buried, admitting things they had never voiced aloud. Guilt, regret, and unspoken desire surfaced, all under the unrelenting gaze of the hotel. The confrontation reached its climax when the receptionist, almost like a guide, silently observed their emotional unraveling. By facing these truths, Sarah and David felt a strange release, a catharsis that was both painful and enlightening. The hotel had forced them into honesty, vulnerability, and trust, stripping away pretenses and leaving them raw but closer than before. As the night deepened, the couple understood that their confrontation with the hotel's truths was more than a test, it was an awakening. The hotel's secret purpose was revealed, and in facing it, they confronted themselves, each other, and the hidden threads that had shaped their lives. The night was far from over, but they had crossed the threshold into understanding, ready for the final revelations that awaited them before dawn. As the hours crept past midnight, the hotel seemed to settle into a quiet rhythm. The shadows, once unnerving and alive, now felt almost subdued, as though they, too, had acknowledged the emotional reckoning that Sarah and David had undergone. Both were exhausted physically and emotionally, but there was a newfound clarity between them. The confrontation with the receptionist and the revelation of long-hidden secrets had stripped away layers of pretense, leaving raw honesty in its place. David sat on the edge of the bed, the letters and photographs still spread across the desk. "I never imagined any of this," he murmured, his fingers tracing a photo from years ago. "It's overwhelming." Sarah, beside him, reached out and placed her hand over his, grounding them both. "It is. But we faced it together. And that matters more than anything," she said softly. There was a sense of relief, of release, in acknowledging the truth, and for the first time that night, the hotel felt less like a trap and more like a strange sanctuary. They discussed the implications of what they had learned. Past mistakes, unspoken fears, and hidden aspects of their relationship were now out in the open. There was no longer room for denial. Through tears and quiet laughter, they began to process the weight of it all. Their bond, tested by the night's surreal events, had grown stronger. The hotel had acted as a mirror, reflecting not only the secrets that had been kept from one another, but also the resilience and love that had endured despite those hidden truths. Eventually, the receptionist appeared once more, silently standing by the door. His presence was no longer menacing, but rather observant and patient. "You've seen what needed to be revealed," he said simply. "The rest is for you to carry forward." His words, measured and calm, reinforced the notion that the hotel's purpose was complete. Sarah and David nodded in unison, understanding that the confrontation had given them a gift, a chance to rebuild trust, to embrace honesty, and to move forward without the burden of secrecy. With the first light of dawn beginning to seep through the heavy curtains, Sarah and David prepared to leave the hotel. The car, still parked outside, was temporarily forgotten. The night's revelations had far outweighed the inconvenience of a broken vehicle. As they descended the staircase, the hotel's facade appeared less ominous, bathed in the gentle morning glow. The ivy seemed softer, the windows reflected warmth instead of shadows. They stepped outside, hand in hand, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air, feeling a profound sense of liberation. The journey ahead, both on the road and in their lives, felt lighter. The hotel night had been surreal, frightening, and transformative, revealing truths they could never have anticipated. It was an experience that would linger in their memories, shaping their understanding of honesty, trust, and the depth of their connection. As they drove away, leaving the mysterious hotel behind, neither spoke for a while. Words seemed unnecessary. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a shared understanding that they had endured something extraordinary, and together, they were stronger. The night of revelations was over, but its lessons would resonate forever. Morning light spilled across the winding road as Sarah and David drove away from the hotel, the experience of the previous night still fresh in their minds. The countryside, bathed in the soft glow of dawn, felt familiar yet surreal, as if the world outside had shifted slightly while they were inside that enigmatic building. The broken-down car that had first brought them to the hotel now seemed trivial compared to the revelations they had endured. Silence filled the vehicle, but it was not uncomfortable. Instead, it carried the weight of reflection, of processing emotions that had been unearthed overnight. David glanced at Sarah, her face softened by the morning sun, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and newfound clarity reflected in her eyes. He reached over, gently squeezing her hand, silently communicating that they had survived, together. "I still can't believe everything that happened," Sarah finally said, her voice low but steady. "It was terrifying, but somehow necessary. I feel like I know you and myself so much better now." David nodded, his mind replaying the moments in the hotel, the locked drawer, the photographs, the letters, and the calm yet unnerving confrontation with the receptionist. Every detail had forced him to confront parts of himself he had ignored, mistakes he had hidden, and fears he had buried. The night at the hotel had revealed more than just secrets. It had shown them the importance of transparency and trust in their relationship. David admitted to Sarah some vulnerabilities he had never shared before, and she, in turn, revealed feelings she had tucked away for fear of judgment or misunderstanding. The shared vulnerability created a bond stronger than any they had known before, a bond forged in honesty and courage, tested under the surreal circumstances of that unforgettable night. Even as the road stretched ahead, promising the return to normalcy, the lessons lingered. They realized that life was filled with hidden truths, both personal and shared, and that facing them was never easy, but necessary. The hotel, strange and mysterious as it had been, had acted as a catalyst, forcing reflection and growth that might never have happened otherwise. By the time they reached a small town with a functioning mechanic, their laughter returned, light and natural, though tinged with the memory of the night's intensity. The car repair became almost incidental, a practical step in the journey rather than the focal point. They spoke openly about their future, about keeping no secrets and valuing transparency in their relationship. The hotel's enigmatic presence, once terrifying, had imparted a lasting wisdom. Some truths cannot be avoided, they must be faced head-on. As they drove on, leaving the countryside and the mysterious hotel behind, a sense of peace settled over them. The night of revelations had ended, but its impact would echo in their hearts and minds forever. They had arrived at a new understanding, not just of each other, but of themselves, and as the horizon stretched ahead, they embraced the journey ahead with courage, trust, and a deeper connection than ever before. The hotel was gone from sight, yet its lessons remained indelibly etched in their lives. Sometimes, it takes a broken-down car and a night in the unknown to reveal the truths that truly matter. 17.